Happy Sunday to you, NIO fam. It's Sunday, June 7th, 2026. It's about 1:30 p.m. Central Time as I'm recording this video. And let's start with the short-term stuff, including the stock price action. If you'll note at the bottom of the screen, I have the three short-term stock price indicators that I've been tracking for several years now. The first is trade volume. And I actually want to point out a couple of things on this. I've got the year-to-date stock action, and the volume is depicted here on the bottom of this left side. And we have had fewer than 5 days in this year of 2026 with 100 million shares traded on the daily side of things. And I actually want to talk about this time frame. Back here in 2020, it was before NIO Stock made its massive move, and a couple of things happened, but I was curious. And so I dug into the data, and from the time frame roughly in February of 2020 into early June of 2020, there were fewer than 5 days with 100 million shares traded. So the volume was very low at that time as well. And then one of the things that happened is the volume took a major move up as we started seeing within the course of a 6-month period, the stock price for NIO moved from $3.50 to over $55. During that time, the trade volume spiked, and we saw, I believe it was 75 trade days within that 6-month period with 100 million shares traded or more. At the same time, the white lines drop off. In other words, the FTDs dropped off. Now, if you look at the more recent history and price action, we've got the resurgence of the FTDs, which we've been tracking as we get the data, but also coming back to this point that I just mentioned with NIO Stock not having big trade volume and the elevated FTDs in place, I'm just not shocked or surprised that we're not seeing bigger moves to the upside. Now, with that, quick note, and this is just the last trade day that we had of June 5th, the pre-market continues to be a pretty accurate indicator. This 4 a.m. Eastern time, kind of 5 and 10 minute, these are 5-minute incremental windows. So these first 10 minutes of pre-market seems to be a pretty accurate indicator for what the market open is going to do, with the red, the sell-off being consistent. So whether it's green or red, that's just kind of a very short-term thing that I've been just kind of quietly tracking. I mentioned it a couple times, but let's see if that continues for the rest of this month. And then here's the other thing, and I think as long as the trade volume is so subdued, I will also consider sentiment very subdued for NIO and NIO Stock. That's just the reality of where we are. And this is a simple, but again, I think an overview, like a big picture overview, rather. And this dates back to 2000. It's the end of 2020, November of 2020. So I don't have as much of the history here to share. But obviously, the number of mentions for NIO, let's say on Reddit or subreddit, mentions much different than what we've seen here in these recent years. So as those have dropped off, with the price going down, with the trade volume going down, and the FTDs, coming back and being, remaining in play, I just think it gets interesting if, or rather when, we see the FTDs drop off, and if we have to wait for full year profitability to be reported perhaps in early 2027. And so that's just kind of my thinking here with respect to the short term. The last trade day with only 37, not even 38 million shares traded, again, kind of consistent with that time frame that I talked about back in 2020, when the price, before it started moving up, while the FTDs continued to be elevated and the trade volume was very low. That's why I continue to track these things. I think they'll offer some indication of when we're going to see things change or shift. And I think we've got a pretty good shot of that happening here in this year of 2026. But if I want to take my, sort of bearish thesis, I would say shorts may know that they can get away with this for a little bit longer, and keeping the stock price action subdued, and not allowing it to move up too much, especially if trade volume remains low and the FTDs continue to pop up. I think that would be an indicator. But in this super short term, let's talk about the delivery numbers. And let me change something here, because I actually did a little breakdown and I want to go through it with you on how we may see NIO achieve 50,000 monthly deliveries in June. Now that would exceed their upper end of the guidance. So this would be a very powerful and strong number. And I think it would be Well, let me put it this way. I wouldn't put it past management, including William Lee, to go ahead and have maybe downplayed the guidance to the upside with the hope that they could come in with a shocking number. Now, real quick, I want to go back and share this because this is the monthly record that's still standing. So this was December of 2025 with NIO delivering 48,135 vehicles in December. Now, obviously any number above that will be a new record, but I'm wondering about the 50,000 number just because it wouldn't surprise me if NIO wants to shock everyone with a number like that. So let's break it down, and I've got at the bottom of the screen, if you didn't see, I swapped out the captions so you can see the prospective potential breakdown for this. But I also wanted to highlight some of the numbers and why I'm thinking in this way, a little bit of a breakdown. And the first one is this from CNEV Home. They confirmed from NIO's top executives that the NIO ES9 is set to hit its 10,000 delivery milestone this month, while the ES8 will welcome its 120,000th delivery mark. Now, my thinking, and as you'll notice if you look at the bottom of the screen, I simply put those two together, the ES8 and the ES9, and if they can combine for 24,000 on the delivery side of things, then that would be a great start for NIO to work its way to a 50,000 number in June. Now, on the ES8, which I've got this highlighted and pulled up, because I also did a breakdown going back to the roughly 245 days for the 110,000, or I also did a monthly breakdown. The per day average is about 440 to 450 of the ES8. The monthly is probably somewhere between 11 and 13,000. There's a little variance, especially if you figure the monthly numbers, let's say with Chinese New Year versus the numbers from December and that sort of thing. But we've also recently heard from William Lee in the most recent earnings that the order intake has actually increased for the ES8. So I still wanted to be a little conservative, and that is why I figure, you know what? Let's say 24,000 for the ES8 and the ES9, and then we'll kind of walk through the rest of the lineup and see what that looks like. Now, if we move on to another new release, you've got the Onvo L80, and in roughly half a month in May, it did almost 6,000. Now, once again, you'll see I went just slightly conservative instead of trying to double that number with the Onvo L80s at the bottom of the screen. I'm saying, well, what if we see an 11,000 number? That would now give NIO, with NIO and Onvo from this one vehicle and the two from the NIO lineup, a total of 35,000. Then if we move over to the refresh of the Onvo L60, and that one, they're saying pre-orders have reached around 25,000. But again, I want to be a little bit conservative. I don't expect huge numbers like that. And they are, I think orders probably start June 11th. I believe that's when they're actually going to start the delivery numbers. So with that, once again, I said, hey, let's just shoot for maybe a 5,000 number on the Onvo L60. And then for not just Firefly, but also for the Onvo L90, you've got it nestled into this beautiful breakdown that Jason Yu shared. And I had to retweet and post and offer it in a video and pull it up again. But even with just a 5,000 number from Firefly, and then what I'm calling a 5,000 miscellaneous. So that could be a combination of the other NIO vehicles. It could include the Onvo L90. And maybe we get some overage or under on some of the other numbers that I projected here as possible. But ultimately, the 24,000, the 11,000, that's 35, another 5, 5, and 5, that's 50,000 in June. It is certainly possible. But what I want to know from you, if you made it to the end of the video, is what do you think? Will NIO, first of all, have a new monthly delivery record here in June or not? And secondly, will they be able to come in with a 50,000 monthly number for this month of June? And if we see that, that's why I'll be really curious about tracking the trade volume and the FTD data when we get it from this most recent month and into the end of June, because July 1st is when we are probably going to see close to, if not a new monthly delivery record, and maybe a 50,000 shocker. So I want to hear from you, 50,000 or not. new monthly delivery record or not? Is it going to matter with the stock price or not? Those are the questions I have. But let me get this video up and out as soon as possible. Have a great day or night whenever you see this. I'll see y'all again very soon.